From coal mines to corporate boardrooms, Robert Thomas has forged a leadership path that defies the script. A Marine Corps veteran turned HR powerhouse, Rob brings grit, heart, and hard-won wisdom to every space he enters. With 17 years in the trenches of people leadership and a story rooted in values, resilience, and realignment, he reminds us that leadership isn't about titles. It's about truth. Welcome, relational leaders and listeners. This is Cultivate, your podcast destination where we celebrate thriving relational leaders and encourage each other along the influence journey. I am Wendy F. Adams, your host and strategic guide. I believe work shouldn't be a four-letter word, but should inspire, challenge, and fulfill. Through a high challenge and high support model, we will explore the recipe for relational leadership that drives meaningful change. After all, as leaders, we're either driving progress or we're driving the problem. So let's grow together. Welcome to a fresh episode of Cultivate. Oh gosh, I am pumped to welcome an authentic aligner. You'll learn what that means. Robert Thomas, Human Resources Director with HICO America, is in studio today. Robert, I am thrilled to have you join us for the Cultivate Experience.
I'm very excited. Thanks for having me on here, asking me to be a part of this. It's always a pleasure to get to talk about leadership.
Oh, and let me tell you, it's been a pleasure for our time thus far already in the green room, which everyone knows is going to move so fast when we jump into the rest of the conversation. You know, in our time together, you shared a bit of your leadership, from the coal mines to the corporate boardroom, and every step that seems to come back to one thing every time we speak, and that's alignment with your core values and how that translates no matter what title you hold. So I want you to start there and share with the audience your why. Like, as a leader, how did it first start to take shape, even before you stepped foot into the Marines?
So my path has been a winding one, right? I've come from a less advantaged background. My parents were high school dropouts. They were just trying to make it through, right? And they pushed me to always better myself, right? And I really kept that mindset. I was very competitive. So that mindset always kind of got me through. When I got to college, I don't know if I carried that same mindset very well. My parents didn't go to college, so they weren't very good at telling me what I should be doing and how I should feel and if I was doing things right or wrong. So I struggled, right? I didn't do well, and I challenged what I used to think about myself. And that path led me to the Marine Corps in 2000, at the end of 2007. And that's when I really learned about leadership, right? The goal of Marine Corps leadership is mission accomplishment, right? So how do you get the job done? You have a set of skills, you teach a set of skills to your people, right? One of those skills that I've taken with me this entire time is know yourself and seek self-improvement. So everything, I'm always self-reflecting. I'm always trying to figure out, is this what questioning myself? Am I doing this right? Do I think I'm doing this right? So always a self-action reporting after, right? What went well? What didn't go well? What can I adjust next time? I've just always continued to do that. Have that mindset of know yourself and seek self-improvement. And you'll just continue to build on these little steps, right? Some people look at these journeys as a climb, right? But it's a set of stairs, right? You're taking a step and you're taking a step, and you might go back down a little bit, but you might jump up a couple steps as you find these different ways in this journey we call our careers, right? And getting good leadership is absolutely key, and giving good leadership is absolutely key too. We can go more into this idea I've learned a few years ago called reciprocal alignment. How do you align these two things with the leadership you need and the leadership you're giving? So.
You've given us so much right up at the front, but we are going to get into that reciprocal alignment. And now you hear it, people. This is the alignment space that we're talking about. I love, and I think this is what there was a draw between, you and I, when we had our first conversation, that there is this aspect of you can't do anything well until you know who you are, right? And I don't hear doubt. I don't hear self-doubt and questioning, am I, but more along, where am I? who's showing up, and that self-awareness space. You mentioned, and I'm gonna label it this, that you kind of were in that deep end of life. That's what you grew up. Okay, sink or swim. And you've given some insight, but I want to go a little deeper into those early challenges and how they shaped how you actually see yourself leading today, especially when you're leading in the face of resistance, pressure, and not our favorite space when there's misalignment in an organization.
Yeah, for me, those early years, they were challenging as a kid, right? You're a little kid, you're trying to figure out where you're at, where you're going. And, I was junior high and we were homeless, right? We lived in a couple different Salvation Armies for a few months. I lived with some family friends for a few months.
Mm.
And now when I think I was devastated at that time, it's very difficult. But when I look back at that now and I see the challenges that I face, they're minuscule from what I was dealing with then and what other kids that age are dealing with at that time. So you really put these things into perspective, as well as I do the same thing with my time in the Marine Corps. Now, I wasn't a war fighter. I never deployed, but you still have this mindset of that was way harder than probably anything I'm ever going to face in life. Right. So I really put these things into perspective, and I try not to get myself, we talked about in the green room about type B, right? I'm a type B. I used to be a type A. I was real wound up. I had to have everything checked and lined and ready to go. But I've really shed that as I've continued to grow, just as a person and in my career, where you kind of just have to pick your battles, right? And I talk to my team a lot about setting a baseline. You have to go into these things knowing where the baseline is, because if you set the baseline wrong, up, down, you're going to be disappointed a lot of these times. So continuing to have a grounded baseline in reality is kind of where it's helped me put things into perspective.
I love, we did talk about this in the green room as far as that type A versus type B. And I told you, I'm like, we're doing well here, Robert, because I'm not really type B, and anyone who knows just really laughed out loud. But I've recognized that taking that step back, and whether we want to say that I'm moving into that B space, just being more open allows for that curiosity, right? And how that's going to then translate as you are interacting and engaging with others, to be able to be open to ask a question before it's just let's check the box and get it done. And I have to believe, when we talk about what did that look like as you transitioned into, now, many of our veterans, first of all, let's not go past the fact of to say thank you for serving, because it takes all who said yes to that calling to have us where we are today. And so I don't want to miss that opportunity. But you wrestling with your identity, especially stepping out of that space and now into true civilian life, what was hardest for you in that transition? And how did it shape the way that now you advocate for others in your role in human resources for them to find their footing?
Yeah. So, I didn't go to the Marine Corps till I was 25. I talk about this journey and I talked about college. I wasn't great at college. I tried college like right after high school. I did well for a while, but then I got lost. So I left. I kind of went back. I left. And I spent about 4 years kind of just struggling, trying to figure out where I was and who I was, and not knowing any path. It was just, I think back now, and it was just kind of blind. It was kind of just dark. So I decided, I don't know, I can't even remember what made me think of it, but I just decided I'm going to try to go to the Marine Corps. And I told my girlfriend at the time, now my wife, and she said, absolutely not. You're not doing that. Right. So we talked and we decided that was going to be our best option moving forward. Right. So I was 25 years old when I went to the Marine Corps. I was in there with 18-year-old kids. I was the grand old man of the Marine Corps. They used to call me that stuff. 7 years, a big difference. But when I got there, I loved it. I was really good at being a Marine. It aligned me. I understood the assignment, right? As they say, I got it. I thought I was going to stay in forever, but I got my Marine. I finished my degree. I've got I was an administrator in the Marine Corps, and I wanted to figure out that's where I think my career alignment path started. Is I had a job. I needed to figure out how to tie an education to that. So I did some digging. I went and found that we had an education building on base. I got my degree for free. The Marine Corps paid for it through tuition assistance. And I got an HR degree. And then in 2011, 2012, it was time for me to figure out if I wanted to re-enlist or not. So I said, I'm just going to try this. I'm going to get out and start fresh. It's either 20 or I'm getting out now. And that's what I did. So I struggled mightily. I thought I was going to get out. I have HR experience. I have an HR degree. Why aren't people lining up to give me a job? And I think reality set in. And I struggled. I took one HR job for a few months. I took a couple retail management jobs that I was just kind of chasing money, right? I thought I needed to be in this certain place in my life. And I struggled mentally. I struggled a lot. And thank God my family was there to support me. But at one point, I just decided I'm going to go work in a coal mine. I'm going to become a coal miner. And I went to become a contractor. And the way it works is you work for a company that works for the coal mines and you supply labor to them. I was making $10 an hour, right? Trying to support a family. And that's what got me back into this HR journey. So from ups and downs after the Marine Corps was a struggle too, and getting back into HR. But I look back now, I don't know that I knew I was struggling then, but I look back now and know I was. And again, I wasn't a warfighter. I was mainly stateside. I was stateside. I, had a kind of office type job, but I still struggle. So I think that gets lost sometimes. And just it is a very tough transition, but I've got to a place now where I feel comfortable talking about those things. I wasn't even comfortable talking about them really then, but I know it's important that other people see that. And I've talked to some people recently that were trying to get in HR, and I didn't have anybody to talk to like that. So I want to try to be, for people who are retiring now and want to get into HR, give them an idea of what it's really like and how do you really break in and use the skill set you have to get what you need.
Well, and I think that you make so many key points in there. One of the things that highlights for me is how important it was, and it is for you, through what was a difficult time, to make sure that others hear, because they're walking through it, that they're not alone. One, and what they're walking through is very real, right? And so you took the definition of leadership, influence, and you're walking that out. How can you influence others who are in? This becomes personal for me. It makes me think of my nephew. We just recently had a conversation, and you said something about being like the grandfather when you walked into that space with all of those young Marine Corps guys at 25, because of the wandering and trying to figure it out, because it was always that you were walking along this path of, how do I align with who I am with what I'm doing, and who's showing up in the space. And I just was having that conversation. It's always interesting to have it with family, right? I do this with clients, and we walk through these coaching steps. And as I was talking to him, I heard exactly what you were just saying come out of his mouth. You guys have never met. What a difference that makes if he can hear someone who steps ahead of him, but wow, that's exactly okay, so I don't have to feel stuck. I don't have to be here indefinitely. That's what I think makes such a difference. And what is our mandate when we start talking about our being a leader and how we walk that out? Marine Corps, coal mining, none of these industries are what would we call warm or fuzzy. If you're standing in those HR departments, right? Steel and manufacturing, that you got to get it. There's a get it done mentality. It's kind of tough. What have you learned in those spaces about building people first leadership cultures in places that may not have actually prioritized that historically?
Yeah, it is. Trust me. A lot of these heavier industry type companies, HR was admin for decades, right? So I got into a time when there was still a group of folks who felt that way. And so kind of bringing fresh ideas and ideas outside of the box to the table was very difficult, especially for somebody younger in my career who didn't have maybe a voice or didn't know my path yet. And I had to rely on other people to kind of get that for me. So it was a challenge. And I struggled at it. I was not great at it early because a lot of these things I look back now and I know, but I think I struggled with imposter syndrome a lot because I don't know that I knew what I thought I knew, right? So I really had a hard time dealing with those things. And I looking back, I think it held back my career a little bit because I would always try to just push, right? Why don't you want this? You need this and fight it. And I think that set me back a little bit. It took me until 2022, I think it was. Yes, I'm trying to think of what year it is now. 2022, right? When I got laid off. I took a job after 1 year. I got laid off in HR, and it was very difficult. And that's when I really had to reset my mindset, right? What am I doing? Right? Know yourself and seek self-improvement. I'm always blaming everybody else. Why do they want me? Why do they not want these things? I had to reset, know yourself and seek self-improvement. And I said, what am I doing wrong? Right. And I think it was, I wasn't listening enough. I was being forceful too much. And so I really stepped back since I've had this new role, and I've really had to, I started as the first dedicated HR person at my company. And I couldn't do that. Just shove things through. I had to listen a lot and get things done. So that's what I've really adopted lately is just, and that's how I think I went from that type A to that type B mindset, right? Of you can't be on all the time. It's not practical. So you've got to find a way to kind of melt these things away and let them go. And I think I've got really good at that because, and ironically, my career has grown, right? I've started as an HR manager. I've been promoted recently. I'm very happy with my company to an HR director. I built out a team. It was a team of 1. I have a team of 3 now. So I see like it's real. It's not something I just made up. It actually, if you do the things you say you're doing and talking about, you can really get there. Sometimes it's getting out of your own way, though.
Well, and I think that's it. You hit it. You hit it right there. It's so much about getting out of your own way. And you've said it a number of times, knowing yourself and seeking that self-improvement. To know yourself, that's got to be key before you can lead anyone else, right? And so you keep coming back to this space of your core values. And even when you questioned, hey, am I the right, do I have what it takes to be in this role? Or you mentioned imposter syndrome. Every step of the way, I hear you still coming back to that place of connecting, but I know this is who I am at my core. How does that then align? How do I increase in that confidence of this is me and here's the role and where do they intersect? Because those are some high stakes spaces. When we can figure that out, there's a lot of pressure, but we can't succumb, and not just in HR, but in leadership, to that pressure and give up our core values. So how do you stay anchored? What are those practical things and practical steps that you find yourself, and now with a team of 3, so that you can continue to lead in that space of integrity to your core values?
Oh, for me, really, I wasn't good. I wasn't good at understanding like what you're supposed to do at work. Like, how are you supposed to be working? Right. So that was kind of me, like understanding what I needed to be doing, how I should be spending my time, at what levels. Because I think I was just kind of, and I think more people do this in the workplace. They don't align their time enough with what they should be doing. Right. So at every level, everybody should be working on something else. And I think a lot of the times, I'm busy. How often do we hear I'm busy at work?
Oh, yeah.
And I love to say, what are you working on? Right? At what level are you working at? So that's what I've really helped me kind of hone in on what is core, not just to me, but also to the mission at hand, right? What's the core value of the mission at hand? How do I align my team's core values with that mission? So like, I know this person wants to be doing something in their career. This person needs to be doing something in their career. We have this thing to do. Maybe I can pull them in and work on it that way. But making sure that our time is right. So I'm a director level. I like to spend about 25% of my time strategically thinking throughout the week, 25 to 50% operationalizing these types of things, working with my team to operationalize them. And then about 25% just tactically doing things, right? So that helps me. And I have these frameworks for every position that we have within our company to give these people this mindset. Because if you don't have control of your time, you can't even focus on your core values, right? So that's the key that I've really tried to hone in for myself, right? I like HR because I just like work, right? What is work? How do you work? Who's working? These types of things. I don't think people think about that enough. Say these things about work, and what people should be doing, but we don't tell them how to actually be doing that, right? So I think once you get people's mindset wrapped around how to control the time, then you can focus on those deeper core values that can be aligned reciprocally with the individual and the company.
Well, you just broke that down so simply. Not easy, but simple. I say this often, and the audience hears work shouldn't be a 4-letter word. And you just gave some practical steps as to how that can actually be true, right? That intentionality of our time. You're so right. I'm busy, I'm overwhelmed, I'm overloaded. In doing what? When you come back, and it's not that those things, that statement is incorrect. Do we have a lot that's going on? But what are we doing as far as creating margin? We talked about that space of, hey, creating pause, and that the pause is a good thing. Being able to say no to good so we can say yes to better and best yeses. To me, what you're saying to yourself, again, leading yourself well and looking for that improvement, that steps into what the definition of relational leadership is. High challenge, high support. You're putting that challenge out to your colleagues, to your team, to the workforce that's coming and interacting, engaging with you and saying, hey, I understand that we do have a lot life, right? We're 360-degree people. I'm going to support you in that. I'm going to challenge you with this question. What are you doing with your time? How are you spending it? And are you being that intentional to say, hey, 25, 50, 25? I love those steps. You took us to school with that one. And I think that there's so much that we can chew over in that space. 17 years deep into your HR career, not done yet. And you speak with the clarity of someone who's done this forever. You haven't lost sight of people in all this processing. What's a myth that you think that people just in general have about HR leadership that you wish that we could really address and let go of?
Yeah, I think it's that I tell my team all the time, right? I don't want to force things down people's throats, right? I think people are just like, well, HR is making us do this. HR is making us do that, right? Oh, this is an HR thing. So I'm very cautious what we're doing. I talk to my team a lot. Slow is smooth and smooth is fast, right? I've been doing this for 3 years at HICO. Some of the things I talk about a lot, but haven't happened yet. But and why is HR not doing this yet? They told us they were going to do this, right? But I don't want to do things. You talked about intentionality, right? I want to make sure we're doing things that our people want. We're taking this approach right now. We're doing a top-down review from our leaders of what they think things are. We're doing a bottom-up approach with a culture survey right now. And we're trying to meet in the middle somewhere and see if it's a push up, if it's a push down, if we're aligned here, right? So we're trying to do these things and just listen. And then we're going to take all that information and we're going to digest it. And we're going to categorize it. What's the top thing? What's the next thing? What are these things? And then figure out strategically, based on the vision that we've got from our leaders, what are we going to do? What are we going to focus on first? Because you've got to take your time. Once you identify those strategic level things, can we operationalize this? So you have to look at it. Can we make this work given the budget, time constraints, the lift? And then, okay, maybe that was priority, but it's going to take longer, so we need to shift it, right? So that's what we're trying to get to, trying to get our people to think of us as everything we do is based on what you want, right? Some things we have to have, some things we need, some things might feel we're being forced to do them. But when we get to that point, we have to message it correctly, right? What's the messaging? So I want people to know that we're working for them, not against them. I've seen some nasty stuff on LinkedIn about HR from senior level leaders that I'm just not comfortable with. And I would not be comfortable in a company like that. But I feel that I have the support from everywhere, 360 in my organization. And it makes it much easier for us to change that mindset about HR.
Well, and I appreciate you saying that, because what you've shared is, and this is near and dear to my heart, that there's strategy when you're talking about human resources, right? And being able to say, do we actually have the resources that we need to, as you mentioned, operationalize what we've sat and had conversation? But you also are talking about having everyone at the table, the right voices. So we're not just hearing from one end or one department or one aspect of the company, but recognizing that it takes those on frontline and those at the strategic decision making table. It sounds like you're one of those folks, or that your department has that seat. That makes such a tremendous difference. What we're doing in leadership, no matter what organization we are walking that out in, is not just for us and what we're doing today. It is a legacy space, right? So you've talked about people who have spoken into you and shaped your leadership. So that question becomes, what are we doing? What are you doing? What am I doing to make sure that we're leaving this legacy of strategy and people first, and not just talking about it, but how do we practically walk it out? What do you want to leave behind when people talk about your leadership legacy that you want to be most proud of?
Yeah, I want people to know that I was, I'm always looking out for them, right? Everything I have done in my career, I've always worked in these small units, right? In the Marine
Mhm.
Corps, back to this concept of small unit leadership, right? And you get into the Marine Corps concept of small unit leadership was a fire team, a 4-person fire team, where you have this group of people that you're just really bonded with and you really understand them. So I like forming those meaningful relationships in my organizations and having
Mhm.
these like impactful, like I really don't just say things to say them. If I say something, that's one of my other things. I'm very mindful of what I say. I really, especially in HR, I've learned you've really got to be intentional, back to this concept, right? Of what you
Mhm.
say and what you do, right? So
Yes.
everything that I say and do to people, I want them to know it wasn't just me saying it. I really meant that thing, or I'm really trying to set you up for success. That's important to me, right? What I do, all this stuff, it is what it is. It's whatever. But these people that I've connected with, I still have friends that I haven't seen. It's going to make me emotional, right? I haven't seen in 13 or 14 years that were in the Marine Corps with me. But if I saw them tomorrow, it would be like it was the day we were sitting in the
Mm.
office, right? That's the most important thing to me, is those relationships that you get out of work as you see people grow, as you see people learn, as you see like the light switch flip on. I've had my favorite slash worst thing is, man, I should have listened to you. Why didn't I listen to you? Right.
Wow.
and,
Yep.
and I get a lot of that from the younger guys who are in the Marine Corps about going to school. I said,
Mm.
go to school. It's free. And now they're like, you were right, dude. So, but that means a lot. And people coming back and talking to me and telling me about that thing. If I had that for the rest of my life, I would be happy.
And that comes, I mean, pouring forth your passion for people and people first. And you said it. And again, speaking my language, Robert, and that's the relational aspect of what we do. That can't go away. I mean, that is what everything moves at the speed of, is the relationship. And that is so key and important in the work that you are doing, yes, in human resources, but what we are doing as leaders. Our time is coming to a close here, and it's always not enough, but I'd be remiss if I didn't ask this, kind of wrapping our time up, because I think it's good for us to be able to really look at what is versus what may be our perception. So in your opinion, what's the biggest misconception that leaders live with and unfortunately pass on to others?
Yeah. So one of the biggest challenges I think we face as leaders is when you have somebody sit in front of you, and sometimes people just want to vent and they want to just
Mm.
talk to you and they want to have these things. And I think the worst thing that happened in my career is, now you know how I feel when somebody says that to you. For
Mm.
for me, that's a deal breaker. And I talked about the way we talk as leaders. I think leaders need to be more intentional when they're talking to their people, because like kids, sometimes we don't realize how much people hang on to every word we
Oh,
say,
yes.
right? So I think sometimes we get so busy in being a leader or being a worker or being this other thing, a husband, parent, that we get lost in that person sitting in front of us and what they're actually trying to tell us. So and for me, it's very important. I'm challenging my teams on this too, back to this relational
Hmm.
relationship is, and tying all these things together, small unit leadership. I'm challenging my leaders who have more reports than they should probably, to look at how to give their people enough time. And if they're not giving their enough time, how do we restructure the team so that there is more time for everybody? So I think that giving, no, they know if they need anything. How often you heard this? They know if they need anything, they can come to me. But some people aren't like that. Some people aren't type A's that are going to bust in your office and tell you what's all the problems. You've got to sometimes give those people that time, those type B's who need your undivided attention on them to get what they need out of it. And I think that gets lost in our leaders sometimes, just in the shuffle, right? In the grind of work. And that's why I think it's important. Again, I can tie all these. That's my goal always, is to never compartmentalize things. It's to tie all these things together. And the only way you can get better at that intentional time is to own your time, right? Is your time being managed correctly? Because maybe it's not, and you're focusing on the wrong priority when you need to be focusing on these things. So I think that's important, right? Really focusing on that time aspect, that you're really digging into your people and understanding your people, because you will, I've seen this a million times. People don't leave jobs, they leave bad bosses, right? So I never want to be that bad boss, and I never want somebody on my team to be that bad boss. That's what I'm trying to get at.
Your authenticity and bringing to the table the experiences that you have had and how you've grown from them and how you're continuing to mature in that space is so refreshing and I would say contagious. If we were to ask your team that you're working with and those who you're influencing, and I know you've done that for us today. I have been, especially when you get up in my mix about time, right? That's a place and a space. It is the most precious gift that we have and that we can give, because we can't get any more of it. So we really need to be able to be intentional and to protect it and to use it wisely. So what a great nugget that you left us with right at the end.
And I'll give you one more too.
Bonus.
Just a quote that I've lived with since I was a kid. You talked about drive. What drove you, right? I was always very driven just to get better, to make those steps. But you talk about precious, right? Steve Prefontaine, he was a distance runner. He's one of the greatest distance runners in the 70s, in coming up in college in the Olympics. And he said, to give anything less than your best is to sacrifice the gift, right? And what's the gift? The gift of life, right? To give. So I've always had that mindset of, this is precious, this time. So if I'm just going to, we used to call it 8 and skate in the Marine Corps. If I'm just going to 8 and skate with my career, I'm not going to get what I need out of it. I am sacrificing that gift. And I never want to feel like I've left something on the table.
Well, Robert, you didn't leave anything on the table. You gave it to us all, right? Nothing, all of it left on the court for us to pick up. And I just want to encourage the audience, don't leave it here today. We got to take these things, we got to chew on them, and we got to start that point of application. All right. Well, before we wrap things up, it's always good to get a little bit of a fun insight into the guests. So I'm going to ask you some very important questions.
Absolutely.
Favorite ice cream flavor?
Chocolate peanut butter cup.
Okay. All right. My younger sister would definitely agree with you in that space. And then outside of everything that you've shared and what you're doing in and through your team and the work aspect, what fills Robert's cup outside of that space?
Oh man, I'm a big yard nerd. I like being in the lawn. I tell people I watch lawn care videos on YouTube. I've like, I do stuff like that with my free time. I like being outside, right? And I like just being outside with my family and my kids and things like that. And I love gardening. Me and my son garden together, and he's always helped me pick tomatoes and peppers and things like that. And just that, again, intentional time doing these types of things, planting trees, doing these types of things. I love walking. I just love being out in nature, this type. And one of my other things, I love doing fantasy football too. That's one of my other things. I'm just a big fantasy football geek. Oh, sorry, excuse me. And I'd say those two.
Fantastic. Well, I can't say enough, Robert. The insightful takeaways that we have from what you've shared today, again, coming from such an authentic place, has filled my cup. You're living that why out loud. And I am so grateful that you said yes to sharing just a smidge with us today on the Cultivate experience. So Thank you again so much.
No problem. Thank you for having me. If you ever want to chat again, please don't hesitate to let me know.
Well, we definitely need more time. We could take several of those points and dig in deeper. So I'm sure we'll have more opportunity there. If people want to connect with you or to learn more about the organization, what's the best way to do that?
Myself, LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn, Robert Thomas. It's probably a pretty common name. So if you put Robert Thomas, like Marine Corps, Robert Thomas HICO, HICO in there, that'll probably bring it up. And again, I work at HICO America. Our website, HICOamerica.com. You can check us out. All of our a lot of stuff on there, amazing stuff about the company. So please check me out. Reach out to me, connect with me, shoot me a message. I'll probably shoot you a message if you connect with me. I literally I talk to every person who connects with me. If they want to talk to me, they can. If they don't, hey, but it is what it is. But I at least make that effort.
I can attest. That's a true statement, and you won't walk away disappointed. Well, thanks so much, Robert. Okay, Cultivate collaborators, you know what this means. It's a wrap today, but just remember, each of us, we all bring our own special flavor to the mix of relational leadership. We heard so much of that today. So until next time, let's keep stirring things up, making an impact, and being better together. Thank you so much. Before we sign off today, I want to send out huge appreciation to our listeners for tuning in. I hope you felt seen, heard, and inspired to level up your own leadership journey. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. And if you're ready to level up your leadership, connect with me at cultivateforgood.com. That's cultivateforgood.com.